Martin McGuinness, what on earth are you doing breaking bread with the head of state of an occupying power?
I have many reasons why I shouldn't meet with Queen Elizabeth, but she too has many reasons why she shouldn't meet with me, but we both thought it was an important thing to do.
Yeah, but you know, you go back, I first met you in the 1970s.
Yeah.
If I had said to you then, in 40 years' time, you will be sitting down to dinner with the Queen of England, what would you have thought?
Well, similarly, I never would have imagined that I would have been Minister of Education in a power-sharing government in the North. And then after that, joint First Minister with Ian Paisley in a very important institution that has remained intact and steady for the last 7 years.
But is still part of the United Kingdom.
And I'm an Irish Republican. I'm absolutely dedicated to ending partition and bringing about the unity of the people of the North and the North with the South. And we've agreed in the context of the Good Friday Agreement that that can only change through a constitutional vote. And I'm working to achieve that.
When there is a loyal toast tonight at the dinner, will you stand up and toast the Queen?
Well, if there's a toast to the Queen, I will observe all of the protocols and civilities.
But isn't it the case that last year when you were here and there was a toast to the Queen at a dinner in the City of London, you were unavoidably absent from the room at that point?
Well, in fact, that was an absolute coincidence, believe it or not. Indeed,
I was going to ask you how your bladder was.
Well, it was appropriately ready to go.
So that was just coincidence, was it?
Well, it really was a coincidence, absolutely.
Do you regret not going to the dinner in Dublin Castle then 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
Well, I mean, my party obviously wasn't ready for that event at that time. And since we've conducted enormous conversations and discussions with our own people, particularly in advance of the Queen Elizabeth's visit to Belfast and whether or not I should be involved in meeting with her at that time, and effectively people realised in the context of a conflict resolution process that it was very important to be involved, not in mealy-mouthed words about reconciliation, but actual acts of reconciliation.
Isn't it the case that you saw how popular that visit of the Queen to Ireland was, and you realised that by not being part of it, you were losing political capital?
No, that's not the reason for this at all. I mean, I watched the conduct of that visit very, very carefully, and I have to say I was tremendously impressed. Tremendously impressed that Queen Elizabeth was prepared to stand in solemn commemoration of those people who fought against British rule in Ireland, that she was prepared to honour the Irish language in the way that she did.
Sounds to me as if you ought to toast her.
Well, as I say, in the course of tonight's events, I won't disappoint anybody.
We'll see. Do you think that these events, this visit, that last visit, are making a united Ireland closer?
Well, I do believe that we are inexorably moving towards the reunification of Ireland, but it can only happen by purely peaceful and democratic means.
And if I recalled the Martin McGuinness of those many years when we were both a lot younger, you would not have dreamed of settling for anything other than a 32-county socialist republic. If I were to say to you now, you've sold out, what would you say?
Well, the important thing is that the people who elect me don't believe that I've sold out. I stand in a constituency which is one of the most Republican nationalist constituencies in the whole of Ireland. And in every election that I've fought in that constituency, my mandate has increased because people want peace. I actually think that the vast majority of people are miles ahead even of some of the most negative politicians that are out there.
In this changed environment in which you find yourself living, we all find ourselves living, I wonder if you don't think that it's time for a general amnesty. It's time, as all the on-the-runs have got an amnesty. Shouldn't British soldiers who were caught up in it too be given an amnesty?
I think we've made enormous progress. We've made enormous progress in the context of, hopefully, if we can conclude the discussions over the next number of months, provide a menu of options for a very important constituency. Those are the victims. And I think that that is the best way to deal with it, because we have different opinions within victims groups. There are people who do want people arrested, they do want conviction. We have other people who want people arrested but they don't want convictions, and we have other people who are part of victims groups who don't want anybody arrested at all.
What does that mean in terms of an amnesty for British soldiers as is applied to some IRA members?
Well, effectively the British Army and British soldiers who've been involved in the killing of hundreds of nationalists and Republicans in the North have had an amnesty.
I'm asking you what you think.
But the number of British soldiers who actually were charged and went to prison, you could count on the fingers of one hand.
I'm asking you what you think should happen.
I've told you what I think should happen. I think the negotiations...
You don't have a view.
I do have a view.
What is it?
That our approach is a better approach than the one that you suggest. For the simple reason for me to say...
So you don't believe in an amnesty for British soldiers, but you do believe in it for Republicans?
But Republicans haven't had an amnesty.
180 letters went out.
To people who had no case to answer.
You don't think in the interests of fairness that there ought to be seen to be an equity between what happens to, let's call them soldiers on both sides. You don't think that?
No, I've made it very, very clear that I think that you cannot compare the issue of what happened over on the runs with the situation in regard to the British Army.
But it's an entirely different world now, as you've already acknowledged.
Yes. What the parties to the talks hopefully will agree over the course of the coming months would be that we provide a menu of options for people who suffered as a result of the conflict. So nobody's arguing, including Sinn Féin, for an amnesty.
Martin McGuinness, thank you.
Thank you.